Valorant is a game with tons of settings in the menu that honestly are really overwhelming if you don't know what you're doing. That's why I'm making this video explaining 10 settings that you need to change in Valorant. These will help you get a competitive advantage and help your game run better. Without further ado, let's get into our first setting, which is going to be our map settings. Okay, so I've set my map settings to what I think is default, and as you can see, you can't even see the entire map. You don't really have a clue what's going on just like this part of the map. See, I ping it, you can't even see it. Let's say you're playing over all the way on B site, you can't tell what's happening on A. Someone could be pinging right here, you wouldn't even know. So let's fix this. All right, now when it comes to the rotations, I personally like it having on fixed. It's up to the person, but I think fixed is a little bit better. Basically on rotate, as I look around, the map turns with me. On fixed, it's always facing one way. And then for the map orientation, I like to have it based on the side you're on. This way, it's always pointing towards where you're pushing, as this way, it's sometimes not. That is again more of a preference one, but our next one is a little bit more important. Key player centered is going to be off. The reason you do this is because now, as you can see, you get a whole view of the entire map. If someone's pinging here, you're going to know. You'll have way more intel of what's going on in the match around you. This is going to help with your rotates because you don't want to be sitting B the entire time when people are pushing out A. And we all know Valorant players, it's hard to get comms in when you're solo queuing, so you're gonna need everything you can to get the info you need. And then when it comes to your map size and zoom, this is preference, but there are things you want to avoid. Number one, you don't want your map to be too big. Look how much of my screen this is taking up. I can't see anyone in main right now if they're peeking main. That's a little bit annoying. So what I personally run it at is 0.953. It's a little bit smaller than the default, but I think it's a pretty good size and you're able to see what you need to see. Then for my minimap zoom, I like to run that at 0.908. Zooms out a little bit, make sure I can see everything. You don't really need to be too zoomed in on the minimap. You get a pretty good idea of things even when it's smaller. You just want it to be actually visible to you. So make sure it's not too big, make sure it's not too zoomed in. And then the second setting that you need to change also falls into the map category. Minimap vision cones need to be on. If you're unaware about what this is, take a look at my map right now. As you can see, where I'm currently looking is visible on my map. This applies to the teammates you have around you. You may be wondering, why is this useful? Well, let me tell you. Let's say I'm holding B and I have a teammate standing exactly where I am. Maybe I'm a Cypher sitting on cams right here, and I can't see what's going on around me because I'm on cams. Now, let's say you don't have your cones on. You're going to assume that your teammate here is watching main, but as we can tell by our vision cone, this person is not watching main. This is just another one of those things that helps out a ton with solo queue because you get the intel without your teammates having to say it. You can see where they're looking and make play calls based exactly on that. Now, that was just 2 of the 10 settings I'm be showing you throughout this video, and they only get more important. While the last 2 settings focus more on game settings, now we're going to go into mouse settings. If you make your way over to general, around the top, you should see raw input buffer at the bottom of the mouse category. This needs to be set to on. Some may consider this a preference change, but I don't think that's true. I think you need to be running this and you're throwing if you aren't. Now, the game doesn't really tell you what this is, but in case you're wondering, I'll let you know. So one of the main advantages of raw input buffer is the fact that it curbs out your input latency. It streamlines the input signals, which reduces the delay between what you do and what happens in the game. Basically, it keeps the inputs from your mouse a little bit sharper and gets them with less latency. This is obviously important because when you're aiming, you want to make sure there's nothing getting in your way and you want to be as smooth as possible. Basically, it'll just make you more precise, and obviously it's pretty useful. And this next setting might be getting you killed without you even realizing it. If you scroll to the other section on the general tab, you're going to see this setting right here that says show corpses. You're going to want this on off. Let me explain why. Now that I turned it on, let's make sure I can respawn, and we're just going to die really quick. Okay, well, that didn't work the way I wanted to, but basically, when show corpses are off, a little thing just spawns below the death spot, which is a little marker that shows who died there. Disappears pretty quickly, it doesn't last long, it keeps pretty out of the way. But when show corpses is on, you're going to see a body right here, which could block your vision, preventing you from getting a kill. It may sound small, but in a game where everything matters, obviously, you're going to need that advantage. Things like this make or break one round, which could make or break your game. And obviously, we're trying to min-max our win-loss here. Not only might it give you advantage when it comes to seeing people around the map, it'll also improve your FPS. Now, this won't be a drastic thing, but if you really are struggling to get better frames per second, it is less things for your computer to render, so as people are dying around the map, it won't be bringing your frames down as much. Basically, anything that reduces the amount of load on what your computer has to bring into the game will help your FPS, so keep that in mind if you have a poo-poo butt computer. Speaking of poo-poo butt computers, we're gonna go to our video settings and take a look at our limit FPS section. In my opinion, these should all be off. Now, the reason these should be off is pretty simple. Basically, the more FPS you get will always be the better. And you may think, oh, well, I only have a refresh rate of 144, so why would I need to get 300 FPS? Well, the thing is, the more FPS you get, the quicker your game will run with less latency. I could get really in detail into why, but to be honest, not only do I not know, it's really sciencey and I don't think you'd want to hear it anyways. But basically, more FPS, game runs smoother, obviously, and you'll get more kills. It's really just, it's math. But on the off chance your computer is horrible, limiting FPS may actually help you. Let me explain why. The one drawback to having your FPS uncapped is that your computer is always trying to run as much as possible. This isn't a bad thing per se, as using your GPU is good for latency, but you may actually end up getting more frame stutters if your computer can't handle the game for some reason. So maybe you limit your FPS, and what you're gonna do is you take your monitor's refresh rate and you just add 20. I play 144 Hertz, I do a 164 cap. This allows me to at least get slightly above and get that input advantage that I was talking about earlier, while also capping my frames, reducing the load my computer is taking. This will not only provide for a smooth experience, but you still get the benefits I brought up earlier of having the uncapped FPS. But again, I recommend running it on off, unless if your computer is stuttering a lot. That is when I would recommend changing it back. Setting number 6 actually ties into these limiting FPS values that we're talking about, and that's going to be our VSync setting. Now this needs to be off. The easy way to explain it is that VSync tries to prevent screen tearing in your game. This applies to a smoother look visually, but it's not as good as you think it is. Now, it does this smoothing by synchronizing the frame rate of your computer's graphics card with the refresh rate of your monitor. It doesn't say it is right now, but in most games, your VSync does actually cap your FPS to what your refresh rate is. I don't know why it's not doing it, but that's what it typically does. This is going to result in you getting lower FPS, but also one more really bad thing, and that's input delay. Most of the time, turning on VSync adds an incredible amount of input delay to where it's actually noticeable between your inputs, like flicking your mouse across your screen or shooting. The solution is simple: you turn off VSync. There's not really a reason to use it, especially when playing a game that's competitive. I don't see most people caring about their graphics that much. You shouldn't get too much screen tearing if you're running FPS above your refresh rate. It's really just one of those settings where the drawbacks really outweigh the positives. And if you ask most people that know their settings, they will not be running VSync. Next, we're going to talk about probably one of the most controversial settings in Valorant, and that's going to be your enemy outline color. As you can see, I have mine on yellow, more specifically the Deuteranopia color. While these technically are for people with color blindness, they actually can help you even if you're not. We're going to pull out some science here and actually help you get the best setting possible. Now, if you are a woman, run red. I don't know how it works, but apparently it's a thing that where women actually see the color red better as an enemy highlight. It sticks out more to them and it's easier for them to make out among other colors. So it's a pretty good thing to run if you are a woman, but obviously that means it's less effective for men. I'll try to bring the study up that says this, but I remember reading it. This is proven. So this leaves you with 3 options. You have purple Tritonopia, yellow Deuteranopia, and yellow Protonopia. Now, I'm going to be honest, I don't think there's a difference if you're not colorblind between both of the yellows. I'm in fact going to put a side-by-side up of each of these, and I'm pretty sure if you're not colorblind, they are the exact same. I run Deuteranopia though. I feel like it's the best. That's just me though. Then you can also run purple, but me personally, I feel like it's not a very bright color. While it is noticeable, I don't think it's very useful. But I will say it is just down to preference. Maybe depends on what crosshair color you use, all of that. But I will say if you are a female playing Valorant and you want the best outline possible, run red. And if you are a male, I'd suggest either purple or yellow, coming down to whatever you like better. I'm going to give you guys a double whammy for our next settings because we're going to talk about toggle crouch and toggle walk. These right here should both be on off. But let me explain why. Let's say you're jiggling this corner, and when you swing, you want to hit a little crouch swing. It's a nice little movement trick. Or maybe you're in a fight, you're shooting for too long, you need to go for a crouch shot. Usually it'll look something like this. Ba, 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 ba. You know, ignore the missed shots. That's not the point of this video. You know, you shoot, crouch. If you have this on toggle crouch, this is what it's going to look like. Ba, ba. And it's going to take you way longer to get up. It's an extra input that forces you to click twice, which might disturb your aim. It might just slow you down entirely. It's just a clunkier way of doing something that can be done way easier. Why take 2 inputs to do something that takes only 1 input? And I think even if you just spam to click it like that, it's not as fast as if you just click and let go. No matter what, it's just guaranteed to be slower, and just about the same thing can be said for walking. Having it on toggle might not be the smartest because maybe you're in a gunfight, you might accidentally press it. Now you're toggled to walk until you untoggle it. I just think it's one of those things that aren't going to help you having it on, and you might as well get used to having it off as soon as possible. Setting number 9 is going to play more into your mental, but I think that you're going to want to turn off your spectator count. Now, my reasoning for this is pretty simple, and I think you might agree with it after I say it. Really, all it comes down to is the mental. Let's say you're just playing your game out. If you don't know anyone's watching you, you're just gonna play